So how do we do this? We define a shape prior. So this is a way of defining a shape. So we take some object, so we want the eyeballs. So we just outline roughly the shape of the eyeballs. And we define a function psi that's going to represent the shape that's positive inside, negative outside, similarly to phi. But we're going to say that two objects have the same shape if you can write down one shape in terms of the other by translating it. So I'm going to say that shape is translation invariant. It is possible to make it so that it's rotation and scale invariant, meaning if I take these two circles and I rotate them and translate them and then rescale them, then I can say those are the same shape. But because the images that I'm using are registered, so they're all cropped to be the same size, they're all oriented in this fashion, so that if you look at all the images that I'm using, there aren't any grains that are upside down or backwards or anything. So they're registered images. So all I need to do is translate this shape prior along the image domain, and I need to find these translation parameters A and B that best fit somehow. So I have to define some sort of new energy to find the best location. Using Chanavese's idea again, with the intensity variance, I define a very similar energy, but now it's in terms of psi. And the difference here is that phi before in Chanavese could evolve in any way I wanted. Whereas here I'm actually fixing the shape prior to be this shape, and all I'm allowed to do is translate it A and B units in the X and Y directions. Because of this, wherever I place my initial shape, I can express my shape at a later time step in terms of the initial one by these two translation parameters A and B. So I can rewrite psi of X and Y in terms of the initial condition psi naught, translated A and B units. So the way that I minimize this energy is I just substitute psi naught at X minus A, Y minus B into this equation, and I minimize it with respect to A and B. So I minimize it with respect to the translation parameters. And I'm not going to show you the details because there's too many. What is the problem with this? The problem with this is that if you look at the first picture, if I place my initial shape prior where the blue curves are, I could easily end up in this red region there, which is a local minimum for the energy. It's perfectly happy to sit there. Why? Because if you look at the intensities inside the red region, they're mostly light gray. Their average is very close to light gray. So the first term in the energy is very close to zero. The second term is far from zero, but that's simply because the variation in intensities is great. If you look at this image, which is what we want to end up in this green region. The intensity inside is mostly black. Its average is black. So the first term is also very close to zero. The second term in the energy again is far greater than zero, but very comparable to the second term for the first image. So as far as this energy is concerned, these two positions are just equally beneficial for the energy. The difference between these two is that the intensity here is black. So we need to tell our method somehow, incorporate the information that we want the shape to be such, but we also want the intensity inside the image to be black. So we do this by introducing an appearance prior. All that is the same shape prior which we're translating around the image domain, except it's black inside. We don't care what it is outside as long as the inside is black. So we have the same energy for the shape stage, plus a term which compares, notice the Heaviside function of psi is multiplying the last term, compares the original image with the intensity of black inside of the current shape prior. So if it wasn't black, this last term would be big. And to show what this means is, if you look at the shape prior exactly where the eyeballs are, the energy without the appearance prior, the red curve, is right here. It's pretty low. Sort of a local minimum. If you look at where the gray region, if that's where the shape prior had been, it would be almost exactly the same. So we couldn't distinguish between these two. But by adding the appearance prior, we now have a local maximum of that gray region. So we've managed to separate those two states. So the final procedure, so I'm showing all of this in 2D, the procedure generalizes to 3D naturally. So what we do is we define psi naught. The way I define psi naught, the initial shape prior, is I take a few, I looked at a few images, I looked at the average radius of the eyeballs, their average distance apart, and their average position in the image. This is because our images are registered. Again, this means that they're aligned in the same way, they're rescaled to be the same size. So it's reasonable to try and use this information to our benefit, to have a really good starting position. This is important because this shape stage is very sensitive to local minima, so we want to start as close to our final desired solution as we possibly can. So I also cropped the image to just the region where the eyes are. This is just from knowing that where the eyes are located in the brain, most humans. This is just to save computational time. And I turned the image black and white. Turning an image black and white, you lose a bunch of information. However, at this stage, I'm not expecting a precise segmentation. My result will not be precise. So the only thing that turning it black and white will do is it will speed up my shape stage. Just because we only have the energy will not be confused by gray intensity slowed down unnecessarily. So it will be pushed much faster towards the black region. So this is my initial shape prior, the blue, on the black and white image. I run this, the shape stage, until I get my final yellow solution. So this is the location that my shape stage found to be the best suiting position for the shape prior. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double up this radius, go back to the original grayscale image, and erase everything else. Just set it to its average. I don't want my Chan essay to be confused by this information because I know the eyes are somewhere in this gray region that's left over. I initialized Chan essay's segmentation method to this final shape prior, and I run it using the grayscale image because that has the most information. We want to get a precise segmentation with all of the information that we have. And this is what happens. We start with the blue, that's our initial shape prior. We let our shape stage run, we get to the yellow position, we send this to Chan essay, and Chan essay gives us the green. So it expands to surround exactly the eyeballs, what we want. So this is in 2D, this is the model. I'm doing this in 3D, however. The same procedure applies for 3D. The only things that are different is the shape prior is not circles, it's spheres. Adding a regularizing term to Chan essay's energy to minimize the length of the curve to keep it smooth is now minimizing the surface area to keep that smooth. Everything else is pretty much the same, just because of the nature of these, they're energies, so they generalize easily to higher dimensions. These are two sets of eyeballs that I've extracted. Bad sentence. They look a little bit rough because the images are quite small. So the actual radius of these is approximately 8 voxels. So the only reason why we look at this is so that we can see, okay, there isn't any funny, like, other things that have been found. It looks like we found the eyeballs, but just to make sure that it's actually accurate, I'm going to look at some slices, 2D slices through this. So this is phi, this is the zero level on the surface, isosurface of phi. I'm going to do some slices. So I think these are done this way. So these are for the two sets of eyes. So we can see that actually the contours are quite nice, very similar to the 2D case. And they look a little bit different. It's because we're minimizing the surface area at the same time. So even though we might think this should go a little bit further, it might not have to just because we're minimizing the surface. And again, they're 8 voxels in radius approximately. So that's pretty small. Now, using this idea, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a movie of 2D slices taken in this direction, and this direction, something like that. You'll figure it out. And I've superimposed this zero contour of the slice of feet at every step. Ready? That's one eye, and then the other should come up. This one looks like Homer Simpson at some point. Now. So I'll leave you with one last little story. Some of you I've already told this to, but just to show you what has been going through my head in the last little while I've been doing this. I had a dream about a month ago or so where I was being chased by brains. It was a nightmare. I was being chased by brains that have like little brain matter arms and like legs, and they were holding up protest signs and chanting at me, saying, "Some of us don't want our eyeballs found." I was actually literally in my dream feeling so guilty that I never considered the ethical issues surrounding the question. So yeah, okay, that's it.
Oh, thank you, Radina. I have to say it's the first defense I've been to that's included references to Homer Simpson and protesting brains. So we proceed to the question period, and that starts off with the executive internal examiner, Dr. Miller.
Where do you start?
I know, right?
Your psychological